Alex Thompson's been working 24/7. Axios national political correspondent. How you doing, Alex? Good morning to you. Let's play the David Axelrod clip. He hasn't changed his tune in a week and a half. Here he is on CNN on Sunday.
He's not winning this race. He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly this race.
So what gives next, Alex? Or does anything give so long as Joe Biden continues with his current stance and position on this?
Well, the thing is that inside the inner circle, within that core group of 6 to 10 people near Joe Biden, they don't believe that he is headed for a landslide. They don't even really believe that he's behind, and if he is, it's very narrow. It is a commandment within Biden world that he is the most electable Democrat against Donald Trump. Now, even in the course of potential evidence and Adam Schiff's opinion, that it is an unshakable belief, and if you believe that, then you don't really care what congressional Democrats are saying. And I expect many more congressional Democrats to come out this week and say that they think Joe Biden should step aside. The two groups rather that you should really watch for, though, are the Congressional Black Caucus that has backed Joe Biden through and through and is really sort of, and obviously James Clyburn is part of that, and Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is one of the few people that Joe Biden really deeply respects, that considers, a peer, someone that has really done the nitty-gritty of politics for a long time. And those are the two groups you should really watch for, because if anyone would even come close to the Lord Almighty standard that Joe Biden set, it would be those.
I have two questions for you. My first one is, but wouldn't the Congressional Black Caucus possibly say that they were more excited about the idea of a Kamala Harris stepping in to be the candidate?
That's possible, but it's notable that they haven't yet. Okay. Cedric Richmond, longtime Biden aide, who used to be a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, who's a congressman from Louisiana, he also noted that none of them have come out. But I do think your point is well taken, that the prospect of the first Black woman vice president or president could eventually make them start thinking that Joe Biden could step aside.
My other question was one that I've been following your work for a long time. I think we both have, and you have not been one to shy away from talking about the president's age in the past 3 years, but many other reporters did, and it was pretty jarring last week to see Carl Bernstein basically almost say that this is worse than Watergate, but that he'd known for several months that the president's decline had accelerated, and yet they don't say anything until after the debate. Why do you think that is?
It has been really striking to see some of these congressional Democrats that have come out and said, it wasn't just a bad night with regards to Thursday's debate, but that implies that they thought that there was something wrong long before then. And this is part of the thing within the Democratic Party that's real. They're going to have to reckon with, including Vice President Harris, who you'll remember is one of the most public validators of President Biden's mental fitness. And you now have a situation in which, a lot of members of the administration have serious concerns about Joe Biden's ability to serve as president 4.5 years from now in 2028, which is exactly what he's running to do.
Alex, you're also reporting this on Axios. We can show the pictures. These apparently are note cards that are given to the president. One shows walk the podium with a picture of the room that you're walking into. And the next one says walk the podium as well. And they are stacked side by side. There we go. A Biden campaign staffer told you, it surprised me that a seasoned political pro like the president would need detailed verbal and visual instructions on how to enter and exit a room. We've all watched him for 3 years. I don't think a lot of this has surprised people who paid attention. I think back to Dana's point. Why then did it surprise members of the media who allegedly were watching the same man that we've been watching?
I'll say I do think there was perhaps a lack of curiosity in some cases. In regards to that report, what was really striking to me is that it was a member that worked an event for Joe Biden that told me that they were really struck by the amount of hand-holding the advance teams would have to do. Now, doing advance, Dana has probably seen this, doing big advance portfolios is not abnormal, but it's the level of advance work that has struck some people that have worked Joe Biden's events as abnormal, as hand-holding. And that is why this has come to me. It's the same thing with the teleprompter. Every president uses a teleprompter, but not every president uses a teleprompter for quick fundraising remarks. And Joe Biden has, especially recently.
And that's, I guess, well, one, on the prep, on the advance work, I could kind of say, okay, well, they are super detailed. I don't know if he needs it or if that's just the staffer's position, but it sounds like maybe it's a little bit of both. It is good for a president to be told, like, when you go in the room, you're going to go to the podium, you're going to walk. Do you guys remember the picture of President Bush when he went the wrong way in China and he tried to get out that door and it was locked? And the New York Times had 5 photographs of the scene the next day because it was such a huge deal. These fundraisers where he's using a teleprompter, people knew about this. And that's what I think I'm pretty stunned about. And I'm wondering if, and I believe this has been happening for you, are there calls coming from within the White House? I certainly don't want names, but people who are sufficiently concerned, who are working inside the White House, who think, how can we suggest that the president continue to be the nominee when they themselves told you all that he's only dependably engaged from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.?
Well, I think the justification, the sort of calculus is that, Joe Biden even engaged 10 to 4 or Joe Biden even at 86 is better than Donald Trump. And that is and often how they are justifying, even if they're concerned. I mean, if it's 10 to 4 now, what is it like when he's 85, 86 years old? And they know that. And, I think there is some grappling, especially after the debate. It goes beyond just whether or not Joe Biden can still beat Donald Trump. He obviously has taken a political hit in the aftermath of the debate. But there's this other question of what happens if he does beat Donald Trump? And what does a second Joe Biden term look like if he continues to slip?
That might be a question a lot of voters ask themselves if it continues to be this way. Alex, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.